Hey, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of Ask Me Anything on Coffee and Clarity. Coach Emily and I are here together today, and it's already been a super interesting day. We've had really good conversations leading up in the green room before we came online this morning. Well, it's mornings here, but hey, if you are tuning in, I know we have a lot of followers in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, all across Canada, Germany, UK, wherever you're tuning in from. It may not be morning there, but we're glad you're here. So the first thing I want to say is that we are coaches with Wilderness to Wild and Wild Institute, and we work with survivors of trauma, particularly betrayal trauma, intimate partner violence, domestic violence, psychological trauma, primarily those who have experienced this in some kind of faith community. They have a background where your faith, your belief system, your church community has actually kept you staying in this kind of relationship longer maybe than you should have. So if that's you, or if you know someone who's kind of walking this path right now, I want to just recommend, strongly encourage, graciously invite you to send this to a friend, tag a friend underneath who needs to hear this, and drop your questions, comments, thoughts in the comment section underneath if it is safe for you to do so. We are streaming on Facebook and YouTube today, and we have 9 or 10 questions left from our last Ask Me Anything that we just couldn't get to when we did our last session a couple of weeks ago, because we do this every other week. So are you ready to dig in?
I am. I'm excited for this.
Good morning, Emily.
Good morning.
It is earlier morning where you are than where I am, but hey. So we make it work. We make it work. We have a question from Charisse. Why don't you read the question, Emily, and start us off?
Yeah.
And I will drop stuff on the screen.
How/when do we get to a point where we stop wondering if we were in an abusive marriage? I'm at the end of my divorce. I'm finding myself retaking the online abuse/domestic violence surveys and rereading my old journals. As I heal, I dwell on it less and it minimizes. Then I start to feel happy and I wonder if I made a wrong decision, and I start re-examining it all again.
I just want to say, Charisse, I hope you're watching this, that you are not the only person who feels this way, who second guesses and questions after you get out. In fact, it's incredibly common, even for those who have experienced extreme violence. There are times when we have clients who really just start to wonder, was it that bad? Was it all in my head? I talked to someone just this week who described to me profound levels of, oh goodness, physical, sexual violence, assault, financial impoverishment, even like felonies, criminal things. And then at the end, she's like, am I crazy? Is this all in my head? Am I the crazy one? And I just want to say, if you're questioning whether or not you are the crazy one, that is one of the biggest indicators that you are not. Because those who are genuinely crazy don't wonder if they are. They're quite certain that they're just fine.
Right.
So if you wonder about your own ability to read things, your own certainty of whether or not this was genuinely abusive, it's a very good indicator that you've experienced gaslighting or other things. What do you think, Emily?
Yeah. Oh, I agree with all that. I mean, the saying is true. Like if you are seriously questioning if you are the narcissist and you're doing all the tests and quizzes and you're trying to find out, is this me? That's kind of your number one indicator that you're not.
Exactly.
Willing that the the point that you're willing to self-examine and look at your own actions and see, like, am I doing something wrong? Also, there is a difference between just physically what you're going through when you're in the middle of abuse and what happens when you are feeling emotionally flooded and when your nervous system is on fire, and it can make things feel really intense in the moment. And then
Yes.
when you are out of that situation and your nervous system has calmed down, you are no longer flooded, you are in a regulated state. It's not going to feel as intense as it did in the moment. That doesn't mean that the abuse was any less. It doesn't change the facts
Yes.
of what you lived through. You're just not having as strong of a nervous system response in the moment.
Yes. So, so much yes to that. And I think the further you pull away from it, the more you are living in safety.
Mm-hmm.
The brain does this beautiful thing where we tend to reduce some of the memories that are most traumatizing. Now, an overcompensation of that is where trauma memories get completely buried because the brain just blocks them out. But in order to move forward and thrive, you can't be living in that constant awareness as though the threat is real and present. So when you are out and you are healthier and you are safe and you are stable and you're moving into strength, there are times when your brain has kind of filed away those memories. So a lot of the worst things are just not front and center anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually quite healthy because it's allowing your nervous system to settle and stabilize and move forward. So you don't want to try to bring that back and live in that state of dysregulation just to prove to yourself that it really was that bad. But if you have journals, if you have those things, I mean, there's times when I go back and I read through things. I'm working on a blog post or something and I pull out something old to try to access information from the past, and I read through stuff and I'm like, wow, my life is so different a decade later. And you want to be able to get to that point. Another thing I want to mention to help you stop questioning is our red flags chart that we have with Wild. You can go back and take half an hour or more if you need it. Go back through that, and I'll drop a link into where you can download that free into the comments here. But go download our free red flags chart, print it off, highlight everything that either actually happened or is familiar and is close to something that happened. And when you're questioning whether it was actually that bad, pull that out, look at all the things that were highlighted and be like, yep, that's the truth. I am living in the truth. It was that bad. I'm good. Okay.
I encourage, like, when someone is going through that chart, to really listen to your gut instinct, because it can be really easy to have this initial reaction of like, oh yes, that's familiar. But then you're like, but technically this happened in this incident, and you like try to rationalize it away,
Mm-hmm.
just normal. But that
Now, don't rationalize.
initial, say what?
Don't rationalize.
Yeah, that first initial gut instinct is usually on target.
Yeah, very true. And I am trying to grab this link here. I will drop it in. Hold on. Here's our charts. This is the revised 3rd edition.
This is the red flags link.
Yes, this is the red flags chart. You know what? Why don't I just show that here really quickly on screen so that you can see what you would be getting when you download it. Hold on. Let me find it. You know what? We just had this translated into German. I'm so excited about that. Here we go. Let me share my screen. Now, you know what? Present. Here we go. From my computer. Good grief. This is way more. Emily, talk. Do something while I'm doing this.
Like, do I jump in here? Oh my gosh.
Okay, I found it.
Yay.
I'm sorry, guys. Don't go away. I'm
gonna get on another track there if you were just.
I know, right? I think that I'm like super tech competent most of the time. Today, apparently not so much. Here we go.
There you go. Thank you. I love it. I have used this so many times with my own clients. I will pull this up and we will go through every single one. And they'll be like, yep, and just saying yes to most of them. And it can be like so eye-opening because they're like, oh my gosh, like it really was that fast.
Yeah. Very, very much so. You know what's really cool, Emily, is that this chart is in use by like San Diego U.S. Navy family advocacy groups. It's in use with the Colorado State Probation Services, where they work with family members of those who are on probation. It is used by domestic violence shelters and family justice centers and therapists. I was just talking to someone in Canada who wants to use it for their domestic violence shelter and their family justice equivalent up there. It's so helpful to be able to sit through and just look at all of these tangible examples, especially when we haven't been given the language for these things. So if you want a copy of this chart, it's free, no charge. Absolutely just go download it at the link in the comments. And I'm actually going to drop that link in here, wilderness2wild.com/systems-of-abuse-chart, because that's short and easy to remember. Anyway.
Another exercise that a lot of survivors partake in that is helpful to them is writing an impact letter. Now, I'm not saying you send it because there are different ways to use a impact letter. Sometimes if a couple is still working together, they can write an impact letter and read it to their spouse. And that is part of the recovery process. But an impact letter can also be used as a solo exercise. Yes. And it is a way to personally document for yourself what you did. So you can pull this abuse chart. You can go through each thing and you can write out, this person did this and they did this and it had this effect on me. And you are basically writing you are documenting what you lived through as a exercise for your own clarity. And then you can set it aside. And if there ever comes a day where you are questioning, you're like wondering, maybe I was imagining that, you can go back and you can read your impact letter and you're going to be like, oh no, that was real. This document's through.
Yeah, exactly.
But absolutely, if you are not actively working with your spouse through professional therapy, and like, do not send them the impact letter. This is just for you.
Don't. And there will actually be times where I remember in my own experience, a pastor, hey, Jason, thanks. I appreciate that. Jason says, that's a great chart. Yeah, thank you. A lot of work went into this chart. But I remember at one point, years and years ago, a couple of pastors were like, you just need to write a letter and tell them how you feel and how this has affected you. And I was thinking, I actually refused to do it at the time. There was no therapeutic process going on. There was no recovery process happening. I was like, I think if the past 15 years of interaction haven't made a dent in that, I don't think I need to put it all down on paper right now. So that is something to really get. It's super important to make sure you have the right therapeutic people around you if you share that,
Yes.
which Emily already said. I just want to reiterate that. And yeah, but you can do it for yourself to just chronicle the impact that this has had on you. You can do it with your own therapist, with a wild coach, if you're working with a coach, and it is incredible for clarity. So, all right, next question.
Okay.
Next question. Emily, take it away. This one is from an anonymous person, and we're going to put it here.
In fundamentalism, we focus on sin, always our own. We believe that we are all bad, but that we need to focus on our own badness. Post fundamentalism, we discover the love of God and stop feeling like we're bad at the center of who we are. Transparently, when I think about my abuser, it's hard for me to not see him as someone who is still fundamentally worthy of love, still good, still childlike in needing to receive unconditional positive regard. It's easier to think that he was just in psychosis than to think that he was doing something deliberately evil. And then she asks, now that your beliefs about evil and sin have changed, how do you think about the goodness or lack of goodness of your abusers? And then she goes on to describe that she thinks she's dealing with an excess empathy for her abuser. And that's made it really tricky to navigate what her thoughts are on all of that. So, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one, Sarah?
I think there are three categories of people.
Yeah.
I think that there are people who have chosen to be evil. And there's no way to interact with them safely. I also think that there are broken people. I actually don't think there are any unbroken people this side of heaven. I think we're all broken. And broken people, by the time you're old enough to be in a relationship with somebody, you're broken somehow, in some way, whether just through toxic selfishness or through trauma or through I don't know, immaturity, that, failure to launch, stunted, whatever. So we all have some kind of brokenness though, right? Just as a baseline. And broken people come in two categories. There are broken people who are willing to do the work and who are chasing the work.
Yes.
And there are broken people who are not willing to do the work, and they are either passively avoiding or actively running from the work. Only one of these three categories of people can we have a healthy relationship with or build a mutually thriving relationship. And that is two broken people who are pursuing health and doing the work. A person who is pursuing healthy existence and is willing to do the work cannot build a relationship that is effective, healthy, thriving, safe with a person. Obviously, can't do that with a person who's evil. That just goes without saying, but you cannot do it with a person who is choosing to stay in their brokenness, stuck, or even to recede backward and pursue things that increase their brokenness instead of chasing healing. So, when you are dealing with that excess empathy, the question is not to question their motives or their identity. It's to assess the pattern of actions. This is an adult who chose to continually do abusive, harmful, unhealthy things. You act accordingly and leave the root of that, whether it is evil or just a passionate commitment to staying broken. You leave the tangling and untangling of their roots of motivation to God. You're not responsible to figure out their heart. God alone can look on the heart. You're not responsible for that. They may not be evil. They may simply be broken. But if they are broken to the point of unrepentantly harming people, then they are choosing to unrepentantly harm people. And if they are broken to the point of repeatedly harming people in ways where they may say sorry every time, but their actions don't say sorry, there is no repentance, because repentance means turning around and going the other direction. So sorry is not repentance. Repentance is running the other way from the harmful behavior. Now, truly repentant people, we can screw up, we can mess up, we slip up, we make mistakes, but we are actively, intentionally, purposefully seeking to not continue the behavior, whatever the harmful behavior is. And this applies across the board. So, yes, to our original question, every human is made in God's image.
Yes.
And we can respect that someone who has behaved in deeply harmful ways is made in God's image, and God's desire and our desire primarily is for that person to choose repentance and to turn away from their harmful behavior. And we can give them the space to do that where they are not harming us and we are not placing ourselves in the circle of harm, where we are, in effect, providing ourselves to be the punching bag for their bad behavior, figuratively speaking, whether that's verbally or sexually or whatever else. It really comes down to the patterns of behavior. And, I can think back to people in my life who have done profoundly and deeply harmful things. And there was a long time where for some of these people, I could not view them with empathy. So I was on the other side of the spectrum. And I'm sure there are those of you watching right now who are on the other side of the spectrum. You're like, I don't understand how anybody has empathy for the person who did this. So let's talk about both sides of the spectrum while we're dealing with this question, right? There was a period of time where I had over empathy earlier in some relationships. And then I got to the point where I was so burnt, I had no empathy at all. And now I look back on it and I can see the curve of their choices and how it seared their conscience and turned them into the person they were. And I know that when they were young, they went through tremendous trauma and they were very harmed by other people who should be held accountable for the harm that they caused to them, to those people who turned around and harmed others. And so I can see them with much more empathy now, but I also know that they have not chosen change. They have not taken responsibility for what they have done. They have not chosen to clearly and openly make amends. And so they're not safe to be around, even if it's understandable. It's still not excusable.
Whether it be mental illness or childhood trauma, those can add context to abuse, but they do not excuse abuse.
Yeah.
I tend to be on the spectrum of excess empathy and compassion. And one thing I have noticed,
we're both here.
one thing I have noticed with myself and with others who tend to be on the excess empathy side is it feels very genuine. And yet you tend to think that your empathy can fix the other person. You have this deep compassion for the little child that is still wounded inside of them. And you're like, I see that, and I hold space for that, and I understand that gives context to your abusive actions, and you want to pour yourself out onto this person of, how can I support you? How can I help you? And we end up throwing all of this compassionate energy toward the other person. And guess what? Sometimes they don't reciprocate because our empathy cannot fix them.
Something that I tell clients a lot is you can't be putting more energy into the healing of someone you care about than they are.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Another phrase that I love is that I think applies here is, I will not set fire to myself to keep others warm. And I think that's something that we tend to do as abuse victims, is we tend to stuff down our own experiences instead of being honest about what we've lived with. And we try to tend to our abuser and take on some of the responsibility of their healing.
Mm-hmm.
And in effect, when we're doing that, we are setting fire to ourselves. We're not being truthful with our own experiences. We are not tending to our own wounds. And instead, we're sacrificing all that in order to try to tend to the other person who's not even doing the work themselves.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring up something that Jason said, who's watching right now, being cautious about the pastor route, especially with longstanding relationship issues. I want to say 1000% agreement with that. Pastors may provide support and guidance, but seeking the expertise of a licensed therapist is highly recommended. Personally, mine, I'm assuming you mean your pastor, set me back quite badly as a young man and took a long time to untangle. That is a very common thread that I hear all the time. Pastors are trained in theology, not psychology, not counseling. They are not licensed therapists. And going to someone, I mean, you don't go to an oncologist for a broken bone. You don't go to an orthopedist for a heart attack. Go to the right professional for the right thing. So yes, Jason, totally agree with you on that.
Absolutely.
This next one's really heavy.
Yeah.
And I want to just kind of toss out a little bit of a trigger warning here for this one, question 3 this morning, because it deals with some things of explicit content. And I'm going to just, we're just going to speak.
Heads up.
Yeah. We're going to speak bluntly about it, but we're also going to use terms that aren't going to scare people in the room if you have someone else within hearing distance. So here's question 3, Emily.
What if you find out that your partner was viewing, I'm going to use the clinical term, child sexual abuse material, or violent, explicit
material?
Yeah. With adults. What steps would you take next in this scenario? First of all,
go ahead.
Someone is.
I'm thinking. There's just a bunch of things I'm thinking. So go for it.
Someone you find out has been viewing child sex abuse material. That is a crime, and the most honorable thing that you can do is to turn that person in. It is a crime against the children that are being abused in that material. This is a way, way bigger issue than just your partner having very disturbing fantasies. These children deserve justice. Authorities need to be alerted to the content. Because oftentimes authorities need to learn where this content is so they can take it back, so they can
protect the children,
protect the children, all of that. So there is no other answer on that side of things. It must be reported. It is a crime.
Yes, and that's really a baseline non-negotiable.
Yep.
If it is content that includes minors or those who appear to be, it could be minors, um, that needs to go to the FBI.
Yep.
What you want to, I'm going to break down some steps. Now, we're not law enforcement officers and we're not lawyers, but we've worked with a number of cases where people have had to figure out what steps to take. So the first thing you want to do is do not delete or destroy anything.
Yes.
Next step you want to take is do not copy, screenshot, or save anything onto your own devices, because that makes you an accessory in distributing and sharing the content, even if it's just so that you can take it to the police station.
Yeah.
Take the original device. Do not confront the other person. Yes. So
you want evidence to be preserved the way
evidence must be preserved. If you see, find, discover anything like that, take the device and walk it into the nearest FBI or police station, but preferably those kind of things are crimes for the FBI. Walk it into the nearest FBI office. Police station is second best. And you say, I discovered this. This device belongs to XYZ person. I saw what was on it. I did not look further.
Yeah. Don't look further. Don't try to explore. Don't look through the files.
Don't put your fingerprints digitally all over things.
Yep, exactly. You close it and you turn it in. And you let them tear apart the hard drive and find the extent of the issue.
Yeah. Just do not try to play mall cop, detective, any of that. And I just want to add in this is important also. If your child has sent or received sexting material from classmates, other minors, those can be felonies. If someone is sending your kid explicit pictures and it's not an industry kind of thing, it's just kids sharing stuff with each other, do not delete it, but also do not save it onto your phone or anything, because now you have transferred that from device to device. Do not do that. Take your kid's device that received the stuff and walk it into the police station. Don't delete it and don't try to preserve it on a separate device. That's super, super important. So yeah, with all of that, let's go back to the underlying issues. Yes, this is a massive moral issue. It is also a criminally legal issue. And it is also a safety issue. So let's talk about the safety side.
And even if the other part of the question was, what if it is violent content, but it is part of the industry and not technically
underage?
Yes, underaged. What to do with that? And I know, Sarah, you're about to go down that road.
Yes. So
this is a safety issue. It is a red flag that you are in trouble.
Yes, it is. This is a huge issue, and we want to make sure that you are not compromising your own physical safety in trying to confront a partner when you find this kind of information. So you need to pause all assumptions that you are safe. Again, do your best to maintain the evidence of this, because your partner is probably going to lie or try to delete everything. Now, again, you want to do that by ideally keeping the original device. Don't swap, trade, screenshot, send, transfer, any of that stuff. But your first step with this is to talk to a professional, a licensed therapist, not a pastor, abuse advocate, domestic violence shelter. You can document what you saw by writing down what kind of thing it was and where you found it, as opposed to taking a screenshot or whatever. And get legal counsel, because you need to figure out what your rights are based on the state that you're in, based on the region of the world that you're in, and you need to know what steps are available to you in your local area. So that's super important. Don't expect your partner to tell the truth or just admit something. If you try to confront them, that's a really, really bad idea.
While we are on the subject, if you would ever, let's say, look through your partner's phone and happen across photos of yourself
Yes.
undressed and you did not consent to those photos being taken, that is also a crime. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yes.
And that would be something to advise or to seek an attorney and figure out what, because it varies a little bit per state, but figure out exactly what your state's laws are, but realize that is not only a violation of you, that is illegal to do. Even if they haven't, in some cases, even if they haven't shared that material, but just simply taking those.
Whether or not it's been distributed, taking it without your permission is illegal.
Yes.
And that is something that you need to have evidence of if you end up going through the court system, etc. But it's a crime, and it's not to be taken lightly or ignored. Don't just delete the pictures because you're mad that they took them.
Right. And the laws have expanded too with the addition of AI. And so it is also legal to take a clothed individual, run it through AI, and manipulate it into, unclothe them. So I'm just putting that out there since we're on the same subject, because unfortunately we see this stuff a lot too.
So true. Safety first, not confrontation, not just safety first.
And like you said, whatever you do, don't go to your pastor. They're not equipped to deal with this kind of stuff.
No. All right. Question.
Just curious if being quiet is really the answer, because I've been quiet my entire life and I am tired of covering up and dying for people who turn on me as soon as they have a chance.
Yeah. Well, also, just FYI on our last question, I just dropped in the cyber tip line for anyone who has discovered illegal content, especially involving minors. There you go. Now you have it.
Thanks for that.
Let's go back. Is silence really strength if it's left me feeling invisible, broken, and betrayed? Good question.
I think it can depend on the situation that you are currently in.
Yes.
Because there is such a thing as what we call strategic compliance, where sometimes you know that what you're going through is wrong, but you choose for your own safety or for the safety of your children to stay quiet while you gather your resources until you can get to a safe position. So there are times in instances like that where silence is a benefit for you. It's temporary. But when you're no longer in that unsafe environment, that's when things change a little bit.
Right. So I want to throw in another aspect to this, and that is, are we talking about silence where your partner is yelling at you and you're just cowering in silence? Or are you talking about silence because you're not ready to tell your story yet? And you're focused on healing, and maybe you still have kids that are little and you're just keeping quiet about what you've been through?
Or you're co-parenting.
You're co-parenting, that's what I mean. Yes.
And it would not be appropriate for you because of your child custody agreement.
That's or what kind of things could be retaliated against your
Right.
children
Right.
or whatnot. So, and that leads to where I was headed next, and that is in the family court system. One of the most powerful tools in high conflict communication, which is what I focus on coaching protective parents through, is just not responding to rants and emotional venting, because the more you rant back or try to get them to do the right thing or try to help them see how they're hurting your kid or help them be better as a parent, the more you look like you're equally part of the problem. So silence can really be strength, and it can also be one of the hardest things to do. But you also have to realize that's part of a long-term strategy. It is not a solution in the moment. It is something that you are doing step by step, ideally with the guidance of a coach who's helping you zoom out and get an eagle's eye view of things. But to loop back to the question, now that we've had all these caveats of different types of silence in different contexts, if you're not being silent out of safety and you're not being silent out of legal strategy, and you're just being silent because you just don't feel like you can, maybe you've just been taught to be silent.
Or
And
because you're told that that would be disrespectful to speak out.
Yeah, disrespectful, or that you would be causing trouble, or that you don't have a right to your story.
Yeah, that's very different.
Then and telling your story would not put your children in danger, would not put your court case in danger, would not put yourself in danger. Then I just want to say that you have a right to your story and to tell it whenever and however it is healing and useful to tell it.
Sometimes in those situations, that can really disrupt adult family environments. So I'm thinking like upsetting aunts and uncles or siblings or whatnot. This is not involving children.
Right.
You have to weigh if that cost is worth it to you. But I think this individual who posed the question is expressing that it is harming them to stay quiet.
Silent.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And in that case, I would recommend talking to someone who is a trained support person, whether that's a therapist or a counselor or a coach, and exploring how to get clarity on what steps you could take to break that silence in ways that would be healthy and appropriate for you. And that's going to look different for everyone's different story. There's no one size fits all, and no one else gets to tell you, you need to speak out now, and no one else gets to tell you, you have to be silent now. Those are personal decisions.
It may look like having a private conversation with one person, or it may look like writing a book. Like there is such
so many ways.
There is such a scale, and you do not have to. I've gotten this question before because I've been very public with my story. It has not affected my safety. I've been able to do that, and I've had people come to me and I need to do that. You do not have to go on a very large public platform and tell your story in great detail in order to be considered free, or that is not that is not beneficial for everybody. It's going to depend on your situation for sure.
Exactly. There's no one path to breaking silence. It must be what is safe and appropriate and healing for you, as well as being truthful and precise and safe. Back to safe.
Yeah. And you don't have to tell everything as well. Sometimes, and this is part of like working with a coach, figuring out what is going to be the best way for you to break your silence. I mean, there are still things about my story that I have not made public because that would not be beneficial to me. So just because I've been public about some parts doesn't mean I have to say everything. And
You
you'll
have
learn
the
that. Yeah,
right.
you'll learn that as you work with somebody.
Mhm.
What are the parts that need to be shared, and what are the parts that you're going to continue to keep quiet for really good reasons?
Right. And some of those will be temporary until there is a certain time, and some of those may be permanent. You have a right to privacy and you have a right to speech. Um, another really great way to share may not be telling your whole story, but maybe sharing the things that you have learned as a result of walking through your story.
Yes.
That has been a path that I have chosen to take. Um, there's no there's no great benefit for me to tell a sensational story. There are plenty of sensational stories out there, but I have learned tremendous things, and the focus is on what God has done and how God can heal, not just, hey, look at me, here's the limelight, this is my story. And you can extract the lessons that God has given you, the ways you have healed, the resources that were useful to you, and you can say, hey, these are things I have learned. I am sharing them as a conduit, passing them forward to others who may be in similar situations as what I have experienced. It's breaking the silence. It's using your story for purposeful good, even if you're not spilling all the facts and the details.
Yeah. And let me add something similar along these lines. Just because you speak out and tell the truth does not mean everyone will believe you. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. If you're not ready to be okay with that, it's not time to do it.
It's not time.
Yeah.
I have seen a pattern. I have done this myself. I have worked with some of my clients through this where sometimes when we are hurting deeply, when we have experienced abuse from one individual and we are not believed by another individual,
Mhm.
a understandable trauma response is to bleed out in front of the person who doesn't believe you and tell them as much detail as possible and open yourself up to be as raw and exposed, as vulnerable as you can be, because you are desperate for that person to believe you and have empathy for you. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, in most circumstances, if not all, um, making yourself that raw and vulnerable does not give you the response that you were hoping for. And it just leaves you more wounded because now you've spilled your soul out to this person and they still don't believe you and they still don't care and they still don't have empathy for you and they're still going to protect the person that harmed you. So keep that in mind. What are your motivations for speaking out? Is it to try to get validation from other people, or is it because you are so confident in your own truth that you're willing to say it no matter what people believe about you?
Yes. Yeah. Really good insights, Emily. I like that a lot.
Okay.
Okay. Next question.
All right. How do you forget? Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Yes. How do you forgive institutions and systems and the humans who protect these abusers um, over the least of these, over the most vulnerable?
Mhm.
Um,
We just got a comment on the last question that I think is
okay.
a question on the last question before we pull into this. What about staying silent while in an abusive situation as opposed to setting boundaries with those who are causing harm? I think that goes back to safety.
Yeah.
Um, and how do we prioritize, or recognizing the importance of prioritizing, goodness, my brain is about to shut down here. Recognizing the importance of prioritizing our own safety and sharing wisely. Because when you start to speak out and you stop being compliant with an abusive system, an abusive situation, that is when you are at greatest risk.
Mhm.
So you have
That
to
goes.
measure that
Okay.
level of risk. Now, setting boundaries with those who are causing harm, I'm assuming that you may mean setting boundaries where someone is causing harm to another person and you are setting a boundary for that. It's not necessarily your own direct abusive situation. And in my experience, that's when survivors tend to actually speak out more. Because if I'm watching someone harmful do something harmful to another person, all of a sudden that inner tiger, that protector comes out and is like, oh, whoa, I might not speak up for myself, but you are not going to do this to someone else who is innocent. And even then, it's important for us to do things wisely, to get professional input, to seek wise mentorship, and take steps. Which I think actually leads right back into that last question question number 5, really, really well. So
How do we
can you
institutions and systems that protect abusers and prioritize power over justice?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna can you read that question?
Yeah, that part. Okay. How do you forgive institutions
And system.
systems and the humans who protect abusers over the most vulnerable?
Yes. So well, first of all, don't pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is not being in denial. I'm going to go find a link, and I'm sure Emily has thoughts on this too, because you've had a ton of experience with institutional betrayal. But Dr. Jennifer Freyd at the University of Oregon has done a tremendous amount of research on institutional betrayal. She's actually the one who originated the DARVO concept. And I'm going to go find that link for anyone who wants to go down that rabbit hole. While you share some thoughts, Emily, let me.
Yeah. I'm going to hone in on the forgiveness piece, because I'm sure Sarah's going to add amazing thoughts on the rest. The forgiveness piece, I look at forgiveness as taking somebody off your hook and putting them onto God's hook. Mm-hmm. And what I really see it as is leaning into the hope of ultimate justice in the future, because we do not always experience justice on this earth. Even if we're dealing with criminal behavior and that person goes through our legal system, and let's say they are found guilty and do their time, that is still not going to feel like adequate justice, because we can't enact that here on this side of heaven. Exactly. So when I'm looking at what does forgiveness look like, it does not look like excusing somebody's behavior, just moving past it, allowing them to walk all over us, allowing it to be done. I look at it as I am going to seek as much justice as I can, for my own benefit that is legal. And I am going to leave ultimate justice in the hands of God, because I believe that one day that will be enacted.
Yeah. For me, forgiveness is coming to the point of being fine with God giving them whatever reward they have deserved. I wish for you to have the end that you deserve. Whatever that is. I'm at peace.
For the results. Yeah.
I am not in charge of finding and balancing the good and the bad. I am in charge of choosing safety and protection for myself and the vulnerable ones that I have charge over.
And it's important to understand the difference between justice and revenge, because forgiveness is setting aside the need for revenge.
And that is literally the one thing that God says we can't have.
Yes. Yes.
Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
And that's what you have to get over.
We can chase justice. We can chase peace. We can chase safety. We can chase harmony and live in love. And justice is part of that. Justice and mercy. I mean, they can't exist without each other, because justice for the perpetrator is mercy for the victim.
Mm-hmm.
If we give mercy to the perpetrator, that is injustice to the victim. So the only way to give mercy to the victim is to pursue justice for the perpetrator, right? But that being said, justice is not vengeance, and vengeance is denied to us because we cannot read the heart. And because seeking vengeance destroys our own identity. Seeking vengeance is damaging and destructive to us. You cannot stay a loving, caring, kind-hearted, Christ-like person and be seeking vengeance. You can do that and seek justice all day long, but you cannot do that and seek vengeance. So anyway, here is the institutional betrayal research by Dr. Jennifer Freyd at the University of Oregon. If you are interested in that, I dropped it in the comments. If you're watching it on the screen and that's a long URL to type in, but definitely go and look up her work. Fantastic work. And it's been around for quite a while. So that's a great rabbit hole if you are struggling with these kind of issues. And I also wanted to just thank you, Tina, for sharing in the comments, appreciating the clarity of everyday sinners versus wicked and evil. I've always said hurting people hurt people, but you know what? I just want to give you another thought on that, Tina. Hurting people help people.
Mm-hmm.
Good people who are hurting don't want other people to hurt like that. Hurting people tends to be the first ones to turn around and say, I want to make sure no one else hurts like this.
Mm-hmm.
Hurting people heal others when they are handling their hurt well. So anyway, I'm really glad that you're here with us today and enjoying this. Let's move on to the next question. We're actually, I was going to say we're making good time. We're not. But
we need to get through these last ones.
But you know what? I think this is really, really good.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's very, very good.
All right. I am going through a season of deep shame over things that were done to me. It feels like an icky slime that I can't shake off no matter what I do. I would be interested in hearing your perspective on how to rid ourselves of shame. Mm. Okay. On my Driving Forward page, I shared yesterday Andrew Bauman that I just played with last weekend. He wrote a really good post on the difference between healthy shame and toxic shame. So either go directly to his page, Dr. Andrew J. Bauman, or you can go to my page and you can see that share. That is really, really good at differentiating how shame can be beneficial and how shame can be harmful. There's also a difference between shame and guilt. And
yes, this is so important.
Yeah, the most simplified version is that guilt is I have done wrong, shame, or I have done bad. Shame is I am bad. Mm-hmm. And it's appropriate for us to feel guilt when we have done something wrong, when we have harmed somebody else. We need to feel the weight of that guilt to its fullest extent. We need to understand that the harm we have caused others, that our selfishness or our actions or our defensiveness or hatred, whatever it may be, we need to understand the effect that it had on other people so we can take full ownership, not only for what we've done, but for the effect that it had on others. Yes. And then you can say, I made a mistake or I did wrong, but that is not who I am. And I can do different in the future. I can become a healthy and safe person moving forward. Toxic shame gets you stuck in this, it's almost a different form of narcissism where you are so focused on your own actions and you're like, this is done and I'm this terrible person and I will never be good and I'm terrible at my core and this is who I am, this is my identity, and you get stuck there and you cannot move forward into that's what I did, but that's not who I am, that's not who I have to stay indefinitely.
Right. You know what? I just realized that I have something super cool about this. And I am going to keep talking.
Okay. I'm also looking up for a link as well. And rereading the question, I realize I diverted a little bit because this individual specifically asked about the shame that lingers after abuse. That's a little bit different than the shame or the guilt that you feel when you've perpetrated abuse. So I do want to clarify that. Shame that clings after abuse when you are the victim, and the shame that you feel as a victim is different.
Yes.
Why don't Sarah?
Yeah. When we are dealing with shame as a victim, I think very often we are struggling with trying to disentangle our identity from the things that were done to us. And it can be a very healing journey to work with someone to recognize the beauty of your identity as you were simply created to be in the image of God as his son or daughter. And that your identity is not in any way connected to what someone else has chosen to do to you. I think that something about this came up in our last Ask Me Anything, because I remember talking about Giselle Pellico, who is, maybe it was something else, but anyway, I'm going to just share it again. So in France recently, over this last 6 months, there has been a horrific and world headlines case of an older man. I think he was in his early 70s. And for years, he had been drugging his wife and allowing regular everyday men from the community to come in and violate her. I'm going to use very careful language, but to violate her in profound and horrific ways on video. And when this was caught and became a massive, globally recognized court case, she waived her legal right to anonymity and spoke publicly about it. And one of the things that she said is that the shame, we must stop bearing the shame ourselves. The shame is theirs. The shame belongs on the shoulders of those who are doing the wrong things. Me being a targeted recipient of something awful, it is not my shame.
Yep.
It is the shame of the doer.
Yep.
And so that is a really great perspective flip. The shame belongs on the shoulders of those who have done the shameful thing. Period. Now, I want to, so now that we've said that, I want to loop back to the shame guilt kind of thing for, let's say you are someone who has done things you regret, which would be all of us. Maybe they weren't abusive things. Maybe they weren't coercive patterns of controlling behavior, but you've done things that weren't right. You weren't a perfect partner. You weren't completely flawless. Maybe you've raised your voice or just, fought back, done things. And now you look back at them and you're like, oh my goodness, but I wasn't perfect either. All right. Well, we're not talking about perfection. Very often, however, we have this shame cycle, right? That loops around. And we see this with victims and survivors. We also often see it with perpetrators and addicts. And I'm going to put up a little chart that I created that really helps with understanding this. Because if you're dealing with trying to untangle the thoughts of that shame and you're watching it in someone you love, but someone who keeps acting harmfully, it can be really challenging because you're like, but they're so sorry, but then they do it again, but they're so sorry, but then they do it again. So let's talk about that just for a second here. Whoop. Why is it doing this sideways? You know what? We're just gonna have to look at this sideways. I have no idea how to change that. So, well, this is fun. This is really annoying me. Give me one. You know what, Emily? We have some great comments. Read some comments or something. I've got to fix this. This is annoying me.
Tina, you said, I've experienced many well-meaning ministries, in quotes, that the victim shame or victim blame, and it's very harmful. And she says, I don't have an ounce of energy for this. Survivors have been through enough.
Amen and amen.
We have seen that. Tina also says, we own our mistakes. People that use, I don't know what CC stands for. Do you have idea, Sarah?
Hold on, I'm just looking here.
Oh, coercive control. People that use coercive control.
I'm sure that would be what it is. Yeah. People that use coercive control. It's patterns. Yes. That sounds right. Okay, I think I've got it. Let's see. Yay! I turned it around. So let's look at this chart here just a little bit. This is one of my teaching charts. When we are right here, can you guys see my cursor on this at all, or no?
No.
You can't. Okay, bummer. So when we are dealing with kind of an unregenerate heart, there is this boomerang cycle that just, we just loop around it. And it's the pride and unbelief cycle. Every sin comes either from pride or unbelief. Pride is, I can do it myself. I don't need God. Unbelief is, I'm so bad, not even God can do it for me. And we see this a lot of times with compulsive sexual addiction types of behaviors. We see this with those who may have extremely selfish traits, but are not fully unrepentant coercive controllers, where maybe they were taught that this is okay to act this way, but then sometimes they see that it's wrong, but then they fall back into those habits. Maybe they're not evil, they're just really, really broken. But we see this pride and unbelief cycle over and over again. And the only places that you can really exit this cycle is at the midline. When you are steeped in pride, I can do this. I don't need help. I don't need therapy. I don't need counseling. I don't need outside people looking into my stuff. I've got this. Then we are rejecting healthy input and help and accountability. We are so prideful that we are determined to do things ourselves. Then something happens. Pride goes before a fall, and we slide down into this unbelief. And this is where the shame kicks in so hard. I'm so bad, not even God can fix this. I can't change this. God will never forgive me. I've screwed up so bad. Nothing will ever redeem me. And then they start to pull out of that. Like, okay, nope, I got this. And they come back up. And then it's when you're not completely operating in hubris and pride and arrogance, and you're not operating in shame and unbelief, it's at that midline that we can exit this cycle and say, I am a child of God and I need outside help. I have done wrong things and I can accept God's forgiveness and forgive myself and choose to be different. So if you're wondering, how this happens with someone you're watching, or maybe you even feel this way yourself. This is a visual that you can kind of put in your mind. And Maggie says, it seems to me that this cycle is totally the enemy's cycle because those are traits that come from him. Of course it is. Of course it is. There's nothing in this that comes from God. God is not the author of pride, and he is not the author of unbelief, but everything sinful is rooted in either pride or unbelief. We can boil it down to one of those two things. But both are rejecting God's healing. Both are rejecting the help and the transformation that comes as a gift from the gospel. Because either we're saying, I reject it because I'm too bad for God, or I reject it because I'm good enough to do it by myself. And both end up in disaster. So there's that. All right. I'll step off of my teaching soapbox.
Thank you for doing that. That was wonderful.
Another one. Next question.
Have you been able to get to a place where you are not constantly aware of all the toxic influences on being your healthy self? Like taking care of yourself is sin, or having conflict as a woman is wrong.
Those are two very interesting comments. That having conflict is wrong as a woman, or that taking care of yourself is sin. I think it's interesting that our questioner tied these two together.
Yes.
And I'm sitting with this for just a quick second. So conflict is a human thing. It's fine to have conflict, male or female. The only issue with conflict is how we deal with it. Conflict itself is not an issue. In fact, conflict can be very healthy. One of my favorite books on healthy conflict is the fair, you know which way I'm going with.
All right.
We love this book. And
it's a Gottman book.
It's a Gottman book, and we love the Gottmans. Their research is very faith familiar, but it is heavily research based on thousands and thousands of couples that they have worked with. And so this book, Fight Right, is how successful couples turn conflict into connection. And I would say it is
I would say loosely faith-based, as in they're not bringing up Bible verses. It's not like your typical like Christian marriage book where they're
no.
Yeah, it's not that at all. It's about, it ties to I think goodness and truth that ultimately comes from God, but it's not going to incorporate like a Christian message into it. It's very scientific.
Right. Well, they're actually Jewish, but it is faith compatible. So if you are coming at your information seeking from a faith-based worldview, but you want healthy, evidence-based, research-driven stuff, this is a great book when it comes to conflict and how to handle conflict. Maggie has a question. Are we talking about overcoming toxic messages we tell ourselves, or from others, or both? And that's a fabulous question. I think all of those are relevant. Toxic messages that we tell ourselves become part of our internal brain loop. Toxic messages that we internalize from the world. I mean, you know what? Here's a heavy tip. Get off TikTok. Like, okay, if that's where if some of these toxic messages are coming from belief systems or society, just get off a lot of the social media doom scrolling stuff, because those are crammed full of insanely toxic messages. Or at least retrain.
Or, better yet, like train your feed with
train your algorithms. That's the other thing.
Your algorithm with, follow therapists, follow coaches, like get some good stuff in there.
Yes. Back to this though, just maybe your toxic messages are coming from church.
Right?
Maybe you need a new
I mean,
church.
that's what my thought was on women should not have conflict. Well, that
Right.
stems from you're supposed to be quiet and meek and submissive, and you're not supposed to
Well, I
speak
mean,
out. You're supposed to let him lead. Like, that's where I
there's
got
the
that
baby voice, fundy voice trad wife content that's still on TikTok with all of that right there. But
message.
still, I digress. Yes, so it can be very much faith community centered or family culture centered. Um, that as a woman, you don't deserve to be healthy. You don't deserve to have needs. You don't deserve to have space to rest. And I'm just going to call those what they are, and that is lies. You are a human. Humans have needs. Humans need comfort. Humans need healthy space to rest. If these are outside messages being told to you actively, then it's time to switch up where you get some of those messages from. If these are things that you have been conditioned to tell yourself, it's important to speak the truth about those. And that is, this is survival conditioning, and I am telling myself lies. I am committed. This is where we you said something earlier, Emily, about moving forward in radical truth. And as clarity coaches, we work with clients over and over and over again. What is the truth about XYZ situation?
Mhm.
Is it true that because you are female, you are forbidden self-care, you are forbidden health, you are forbidden rest, you are forbidden to take a break? Those are lies. You have to start by calling it what it is. Those are lies. The truth is, you are a daughter of God. And you know what? There are some men out there who've gotten some similarly toxic messages. So if you're a guy watching this and you're saying, yeah, I feel like I can never take a break, I feel like I can never stop, I feel like I can never sit down. If laziness is not the thing you're dealing with, if overwork is the thing you're dealing with, and those toxic expectations, then this applies to you too, not just women. It applies to anyone who has been given these toxic subconscious
Mhm.
internal
This is
lies.
something we deal with our clients. These
A lot.
external expectations of, oh, well, I have to feed the kids a fully balanced meal for dinner, which includes 3 different things, versus like, I'm a bad mom if I serve them cereal for dinner, or I'm a bad
No, you're
mom if
not.
I use
Kids will be
plain.
happy.
Right? Right? They're good. They're gonna love it. Um, you're a bad mom if you use paper plates instead of, or I'm sorry, if you don't use. Yes. What am I saying? Yes, you're a bad mom if you use paper plates because you should be
Right.
able to do the environmentally conscious thing and do all the dishes and all of that. That is something that I know both of us have encountered
We have told
with
clients
clients.
this so many times.
Yes, yes,
Where can
and
you trim useless extra work? Start
yes,
with paper plates and cutting
yes,
down dishwashing time.
yep. Because if it's a choice between, I remember you said this at one point, Sarah, like getting up and doing 30 minutes of dishes after dinner time, or putting your feet up for a half hour and taking a breather because you've had a long day running kids to doctor appointments and dealing with your court case and working a full-time job and fixing the whatever in the house that's falling apart, all of
Mhm,
these things. Like,
mhm.
you are worth having 30 minutes to put your feet up.
Yep.
And
Or
sometimes it takes
or
some of
even
that
to just curl up
outside.
with your kids and read a story to them.
Yes, yes.
Which are they going to remember more? Mom snapping at them while you're trying to load the dishwasher, or curling up with a blanket on the floor and a pile of pillows
Yeah,
and snuggling with them?
yeah.
And if paper plates is what's going to get you there, by all means, use the paper plates. And if you feel really guilty about landfills, then get a burn barrel, put it in your back pocket. I mean, there are ways around this. But it comes back to speaking truth.
Yeah.
It's a lie that to do anything for yourself is selfish. It's a lie that you're here to just disappear for other people's comfort. It's a lie that you have to be poured out to the point of empty in order to be valuable. And it's okay to choose freedom out loud.
Choose what?
To choose freedom out loud.
Yeah.
To rewrite the script. And if you have kids that are watching that, if you have sons that are growing up watching you do everything while they sit around, rewrite the script. If you have daughters that are watching that and assuming that this is what is expected of them for the next generation, that they can never rest and never stop, rewrite the script. Do it for them, even if not for you. Mm-hmm. All right. We have like 2 questions left, I think.
Okay. We'll get through these.
Yes, we will.
Oh, how is God good if he allows abuse to happen? If the answer
I should have led with this one.
If the answer is free will, how is him creating free will good? How have you been able to reconcile a relationship with him while also healing from the things he allowed to happen to you? I do believe in free will. I believe that God gives us, I believe he gave us the gift of choice. And he's not going to take that away, even from a abusive individual. But I don't think that means he abandons the ones who are being abused. I think he grieves alongside the victims. And I can understand how that is really difficult to hold and to process when your grief feels so intense. And I would never just like preach this at a victim who feels so shattered in that moment. Oh, God was still there. Your abuser had a right to do whatever. Like, there are times to just sit with someone in their grief and say, I am so sorry that happened to you because it never should have happened.
That is not how it was meant to be.
Yes, this is not how it was meant to be. We were originally not meant to be in a broken world. And it is really very sad that we are. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do with someone who is just shattered from the abuse that they've been through is just sit with them in it and not try to fix it and not try to explain it away with platitudes.
Yeah. I think it's important to recognize that that this is a really crucial question, and wrestling with this is an incredibly important part of healing. For me, when I think about the presence of evil and sin, I think about myself as a parent. And if I think about God as my parent, I don't want my children to be robots. I don't want them to say, I love you, Mom, because I have programmed them to do so. I want the freedom. Well, now they're all bigger than me, but, I'm imagining coming home after I've even just gone to the grocery store or whatever, my kids would be like, Mommy! And come and run and throw their arms around me. That is not a robotic programmed response. That is a free will response that is the result of our beautiful, deeply connected relationship. It's a result of the trust and the love and the safety in the space that we inhabit together relationally as parent and child. And in my understanding of scripture and my recognition that Jesus came down from heaven to enter this awful world, and to experience the results of evil himself in order to take our place, that God wants to have that relationship, the one of delight and connection. And in order to have that, there has to be the option not to. It's consent. You can't say yes unless you can also say no. If you're not free to say no, you were coerced. So that same concept of genuine, full consent is the same thing that we see with God saying you can say no. And in a world that has evil, where evil is present, there are plenty who choose to say no. They choose self, they choose harm, they choose power instead of love. And God is wanting relationships that are based on love instead of power. So he gives us that free will. The side effect of the reality of evil existing is that there is harm. And God allows that to play out until he comes again, so that everyone who ends up with him in heaven is someone who has chosen that this is what they want.
And there's a difference between allowing something and being the author
And causing it. Yes. Yes. God is not the author of pain.
Yes, he's not the author of pain, of evil, of abuse. Somebody else is. The enemy is.
Yeah.
But he allows it for reasons that we cannot understand on this side of heaven. Not fully understand.
And I just want to encourage the person who asked this, when you see this, and anyone else who's wrestling with this, to give yourself permission to continue wrestling with it.
Yes. He is not offended by your questions.
Yeah. We don't, I don't see God as a small God where he gets all ticked off if we have things that we struggle with, things that we haven't figured out. His shoulders are pretty broad, and you can throw all your anger and questions and confusion right there and say, this is not reconciled for me. I don't have this figured out. But that slow, sacred rebuilding of trust, God's got patience for that. So it's okay.
He can hold your doubt. He can take it. He can take your anger, your verbal slings that you throw at him. He can take
it. If he couldn't, you'd have to cut out about 2/3 of the Bible, right, with all the people in the Bible who are railing at God. So,
oh my goodness, I love. Years ago, we had this talk about the Purgatory Psalms and how sometimes I understand there are certain books of the Bible can be very triggering for people, and this is not going to work for everybody. But sometimes I do find great comfort in praying those Psalms or praying the laments. Yes. When I don't have words of my own, just praying the laments, because he knows what I really am going through.
Exactly. And you're in good company if you're wrestling with him, because some of the biggest names in the Bible had some fist shaking at God, and he walked them through it too. Yeah. So, all right, one more question.
How do you identify a healthy and safe church? There was more explaining this person's situation. I'm just going to keep it at that. I provided a link, Sarah, if you can see that, for a resource that I provide that's completely free. It is a red and green flags checklist. I designed this for not only parishioners who are in a church and want to know if there are some red flags, or they are currently looking to try to find a healthier church, or for clergy members who are looking for ways to make their church a healthier environment. So I
Yes.
have provided that checklist. And then also there's a really good book that Andrew Bauman wrote in the
Mhm.
last few months called Safe Church. And that also is directed toward both parishioners and for clergy to make churches safer environments.
Yes, and I'm just dropping those into the comments right now as well, so that anybody on YouTube or Facebook who's watching, you can grab those, download them, get that free resource for sure. And I just want to say, you know what? Look for the patterns.
Yep.
Who is protected? Who is silenced? Who's platformed? Who's dismissed? Um, my son and I were having this great conversation the other day about high control religion, and um, he likes sci-fi and fantasy and sci-fi, and we were talking about some of the books and different things that he'd been watching and reading and different things. And I mentioned, it sounds like there's a dominant thread through a lot of this different material about people craving power. And he's like, but mom, that is the nature of the world we live in. It's like, it's the thing. It's the battle, right? Is evil seeking power versus good seeking to squelch. Okay, squelch evil. And so we had this fabulous conversation about people pursuing power and those who are committed to pursuing love, and that something that's very interesting is the idea that if the whole story of Jesus and the cross had been invented, I know this is a little side tangent, but if it had been invented by humans, they would never have made their God come and die in humiliation. Like humans would have made a god like the Greek gods that come in power and just and destroy everyone and fight and power, strength, Um, and God came and took the lowest possible place. And God calls us to go lower, to serve others. The greatest power we have is when we set aside our human power and we seek to uplift others. And when all in a community are seeking to uplift each other in humility and in courtesy and love and truthfulness, it transforms the dynamic of everything. So one of the things that we talked about was, okay, well, if you have high control cultures and high control religions, then big question, which slice of the population is automatically, unquestioningly handed power, if a slice of the population is handed power? And what happens when that power is threatened? So when you are looking for a healthy, safe church, who is automatically given power? What is the criteria for them receiving power? And what happens when that power is questioned or threatened? Watch for the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Just watch for the patterns. And it can be very traumatizing to try to find a safe community. Some red flags: if loyalty to the institution is more important than individual integrity.
If one person is in power at the top of the organization?
Yes. If you're expected to set aside everything in your own conscience in order to make the organization look good. Mm-hmm. Nope.
If uniformity is required.
Yes. If repentance is fast tracked, or if repentance is expected of victims instead of perpetrators, or if it's equalized and sin leveled. If there's a lot of discussion about sin, but it's always abstract and nobody's ever actually doing anything about abuse and patterns of control.
And if things are handled in-house that should not be handled versus bringing in professional outside resources or reporting crimes because they don't want to call it a crime. They want to call it a sin issue. And so they're going to deal with it in-house. It's never a good sign.
Right. Well, and I think it's really important to just not ignore your body's signals.
Listen to your body. Yeah.
Listen to your body. If you get that feeling in your gut every time somebody is preaching or talking or there's a situation, consider it data. That's a data point, and it belongs to be on your plot chart with all of your other data points. Don't override it. Don't gaslight yourself into thinking, well, they're warm and friendly, it must be okay. Listen to your body's signals, and then just go slow. Healthy churches earn your trust. They don't demand it, but they also don't offer it super fast. If you've been there 6 weeks and somebody's offering you a leadership position, that's terrifying. Because they will slap anyone that looks good on the outside into a leadership position, and they're probably not going to pull them out very fast. Or they have really fast turnover and they're constantly in need because of how they handle their leaders. But let a church community earn your trust and watch for the fruit.
And you're not a bad Christian if you are not a part of a organized church group. I think community is really important. Fellowship with other believers who will lift you up, and who will speak truth into your life. I think all of that is very important. That can happen outside of a traditional church building, though.
It can.
And so for some individuals, particularly if you live in a small town and there's not a lot of options within driving distance, I really encourage individuals to release the guilt that they feel for not being a part of a church, because I know, even Sarah, you've done this yourself. You've had small groups of individuals in your home, and that's been a really healthy point of community that you have that looks a little different than an outside or a more traditional church service.
Yeah, there was a season where I love Tina's listening to my body. What a novel concept. Imagine that. There was a season in our lives, my kids and mine, when we were newly a solo family. And there was like 6 months where we spent church day listening to dramatized audio or really good spiritually informative stories or books on tape or whatever, and coloring in the floor and sprawled out in like blanket fort. And that was the most healing possible thing we could have done for a season. And we also have actively been involved with a series of home groups for a number of years. And it's been the best thing for us at the time. So church doesn't have to be your booty in a pew for a certain number of hours on the weekend. It can be wherever you are connecting with other believers and safe humans who are, right back to the beginning of what we talked about early on, who are pursuing healing from their brokenness.
Yes.
I loved what Dale said. I mean, I don't love it because he went through it, but I loved your epiphany at the end. I literally started shaking uncontrollably while in church, and it took me 2 years to realize it wasn't just my own anxiety.
Yeah.
Should have, like, that you had permission to be listening to your body. Anyway. All right. We've run up to the end of our questions. Oh my goodness. Well, this has been a long one, but I wanted to just get started, not do part 3.
Right.
And we've had several people hanging out with us for forever this morning. I love it. Thank you for being here with us. And I'm going to drop a link to our coaching information. If you want to work with a wild clarity coach, we have Coach Emily, and we have Coach Deb, who has been taking care of some other things and unable to join us for the last one and this one, but hopefully she'll be back in a couple of weeks. And We have Coach Tommy, who works specifically with young men who are trying to figure out how to untangle the life of being a good man, even if they've been through trauma in their youth and like teenagers and young adults. And I work also with, sorry, I'm trying to type a URL and talk coherently at the same time. I'm asking too much of my brain, clearly. And I work with those who are seeking strategic clarity, next steps, especially in the family court system. So if you are working,
I specialize in boundary work,
yes,
communication skills, healing from spiritual trauma, and for those with chronic illness, because that is unfortunately a very large percentage of the victim population.
Exactly. And that is so needed. And Coach Deb works with parallel parenting, healing from church hurt, and she is ASL certified. So for our deaf clients, we have a coach that can work directly with you without needing a translator to be involved because she is fully capable of that. And I am actually getting ready to launch a protective parenting group with My Freedom Navigator. So I'm going to drop that into here as well, where you can get on the wait list for the early release for this. Alrighty. Emily, I love your thoughts. I always love doing this with you.
Same.
Thank you so much.
It's been awesome.
And Deb, we missed you if you're watching this. I don't think you are right now, but when you watch this later, we miss you. We love your thoughts too. Right. Everyone else, thank you for joining us for Coffee and Clarity. Thank you so much for your comments, interactions. Drop a comment underneath here. Let us know your thoughts. We monitor these even afterwards as much as we can. And send this to a friend. Tag a friend underneath if it's safe to do so, or shoot them the link. It's also over on YouTube. So if they're not on Facebook, that's okay. It's on the YouTube channel at Sarah McDougall on youtube.com. Thank you for being here with us today. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks for another Coffee and Clarity with the Coaches.
Thank you.